Welcome to Marketing Mindshare, the podcast that brings you into the world of the top marketing minds from Fortune 500 companies to scrappy small and medium-sized business marketers. Together, we'll explore the leading strategies today's marketing leaders deploy. I'm your host, Dean DeCarlo, and now let me take you into the Marketing Mindshare. All right, with me here today for episode 4 of Marketing Mindshare is Jimmy Newson. Jimmy Newson is a good friend of mine, a really brilliant marketer and a strategic marketing consultant for a variety of companies. So, Jimmy, welcome to the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Dean, for having me.
No problem. So, we've met maybe a year or two, probably 2 years ago at this point. And at the time, you were director of marketing at a agency, and since then you've kind of gone off on your own and really forged your own path, doing a lot of speaking events. You're doing a lot of now webinars, but what used to be in-person events in New York City. Why don't you tell me a little bit about what you're kind of up to right now, what you've been doing, and why you made the jump from agency life to strategic consultant?
Sure. Well, actually, at the time, I was debating on if I wanted to be a consultant or be an agency, and they both have their benefits, and they both have, not that they have their drawbacks, but if you're going to have to choose one or the other in most situations.
Well, every business has a drawback too, right? So we could say it. We could say
okay,
it.
we could say it. Yeah. So they're the drawback. So and the agency side gives you stability. The consulting side gives you freedom. And so I really, and I had to make a decision. So I started working for this agency. I've been on my own for years. My background is actually in entertainment. Went into this side because people have budgets, music industry doesn't care who you're hanging out with. Everybody wants everything for free. The more money they have, the less they want to give you any of it.
Right.
And so, and long story short, ended up in marketing. I ended up seeing the value because, working with brands, I see people blow money all the time. And so, sometimes you have to say no to projects if you realize that you can't help them. And, that's kind of like a hard wake up call for people because everybody just wants to get paid. So when I went towards marketing because I saw companies I was trying to help in other areas just waste tons of money, time and energy when they could have taken better routes, taken better opportunities and gotten a better return for whatever the amount of money they were spending. Took that position because I started doing, marketing, but I also started consulting a bit. Then I had an opportunity to become the marketing director for the New York Marketing Association. And I saw that as a stepping stone. It was actually a pay cut, but I didn't care about the pay cut. It was more about the position, and being able to start to play a bigger role. Working with bigger organizations, bigger agencies, being able to walk into situations that you can't walk into either as a consultant or as an agency, because you're now looked at as someone who coaches other marketers. So that puts you in a whole new perspective for people, and that, to me, that's all about unique selling proposition. Then from there, of course, my background being in entertainment, I was very good on stage. So I just kind of merged the two. And now I'm speaking a lot, running webinars, online, offline events. Of course, over the last year, it's been mostly online. A lot of people found that a bit of an issue to make that transition. For me, we were already there. So I just said, we're just going to do more of it. Now I still have a small agency, but I also have bigger aspirations. We're actually launching next month, Moving Forward Small Business, which you actually spoke on. It was kind of like a poster child back in April of 2020. Now it's time to take that and really take it to the next level. And part of our goal is to help 1 million businesses succeed over the next 30 years by 2050, where you have the failure rate of most new businesses or young businesses are at 50% failure by their 5th year. So something that we took on that's bigger than us and really helps us to not only take on clients, but really help foster an industry that can help, you know, small businesses, which is kind of like the cornerstone of our growth as a country, you know, help build them up based on the fact that digital marketing is a strong source. It's here to stay. You know, you have, because of the pandemic, a lot of people really, who have been on the fence about taking these steps had to do what normally would take 5 years. They had to do it in 1 year. And I
Right.
think I heard that from either Gary Vee or somebody like that. But, you had people really had, because if you weren't online, you're invisible.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for really mature businesses that they were just kind of doing it. They were just posting for the sake of posting. I'm sure they all took a really big hit. But then we have clients on the other end of the spectrum, especially in e-com, where the growth was explosive.
Yeah,
The
they were
micro
set.
brands became name
Hmm.
brands because of
Yeah.
it. So
Exactly. So there's unfortunately with every bad situation, there is always a few players that are going to come out on top. And this here is about preparation. The more prepared you are, the better opportunity you have going forward. So, if we look at post pandemic, you have to have some level of hybrid, no matter what business you're in, because this can't happen to you again. And now this should be a wake up call for a lot of businesses to go, all right, let me really get an understanding around this and put some things in place that can really help me, stay afloat. And if I lose money through foot traffic, I can still either continue making money online or increase that by doing certain things online because I'm already there and I've already built the foundation there.
right. So let me ask you something, because we're talking about post-pandemic now. From the
Hmm.
conversations that you've had with CMOs, marketing directors, how comfortable do you think they are? This year, I think the majority of agencies and consultants have been driving everybody to digital. So
Hmm.
how comfortable are these marketing directors now to get back into traditional advertising methods, where it could be billboards, whether it could be print, whether maybe it's radio? Like, do you see that transition really happening in 2021, or do you think that there's hesitation there right now?
I think there's still going to be a bit of hesitation, and the reason being, a lot of us want to get back to work. A lot of us want to get things moving, but if the consumer's not ready, then you have to wait.
Right.
And a prime example, I actually had a call with someone who's in billboards, and he's like, look, I lost millions and I'm ready to go back out there and get them. And, I need to, so I asked him what his short-term goals was. And he goes, he named a pretty big amount of money he wants to try to get back in the next 3 to 6 months.
Right.
And I go, that's great, but nobody's riding the train. I'm talking New York City. I haven't even been on the train. And I was on the train 3 times a week.
Right.
I'm like, so at the end of the day, you have to wait for the people to come back and the people to feel comfortable. Even in the office spaces, we talked about this before. You brought people back in June, July, and August, and you had to let them go again because, there's the comfort level. It's not about you as the owner or the guy in charge of marketing. It's about, or the girl in charge of marketing. It's about the people. If the
Right.
people are not ready, your job is not to wait for them to get ready. Your job is, what else can I do?
Right. Of
You
course.
have to you have to adjust yourself, and if you're not willing to pivot, then you need to find another job.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's a fast-paced world. And if you can't pivot, it's not happening. Not in marketing.
Yeah, not at all. So I think they're definitely being cautious. And there's a few tools I use, and I can see spends outside of digital marketing have went down. But
Of course.
it's part of it is because they're scaling back because they're not sure what's going on. But the other half is if you're doing out of homes type stuff, billboards, buses, things like that. If there's no eyeballs, that's what you're paying for.
Yeah. Yeah. And I imagine the city is getting hit much harder than, so we're in Long Island. So
Hmm.
the Long Island area, it's almost, there's people on the roads. But in
Yeah.
New York City, I feel like a lot of people moved back or moved out to Long Island trying to get away. So I could imagine that you're really not getting the bang for your buck right now
Yeah.
on those platforms.
Yeah, maybe you're getting a deal. I don't know that because I do mostly digital.
Right.
But at the same time, I mean, you still should spend. The question is where you're going to spend it. Maybe you should cut back, but cut back where it's necessary. Because if you disappear totally, just like not having a website, you're still out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I know we were supposed to talk a little bit about SEO, but
Mhm.
I kind of want to highlight the webinar portion because you have some pretty big partnerships. Like you've partnered with SEM Rush before to do webinar
Mhm.
series. You have Small Business Moving Forward, which is a really big initiative that you're taking part in. I know you're talking to some big sponsorships there.
Yep.
So do you see webinars as still being essential for businesses going forward in terms of, and no pun intended there, but just in terms of the marketing mix?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
is it oversaturated?
ev- to me, and I hear this a lot, everything is oversaturated.
Right.
What's the difference now? Now, and so this is so let's take it this way. Like I said, I think it was Gary Vee. He talked about a lot of businesses had to do what they would have taken them 5 years to do in 1 year.
Right.
So I even without knowing the full data, I say we have a lot more businesses online that weren't online last year. Competition. So immediately, a lot of industries are saturated. The difference is how people are doing things. And so you still can have a strong following, and it's really based on authenticity as a brand, trust, authority, and the ability for you to connect with people and really figuring out what it is that they need and being a problem solver and not someone just trying to sell a product. And
Right.
so using that, webinars will always, as far as I'm concerned, be a key selling point if you're aware of where does it fit in the buyer cycle of what you do. And
Right.
so it's people look at it as, oh, that's the tool. I mean, that's the end goal. The webinar is not the end goal. The webinar fits into something else that should be the end goal.
Right.
Or the live event is that, or the land, or the marketing funnel is that, or all these things are just tools. And when you look at them as tools that are part of a bigger system, at the end of the day, I really don't care what works, but does it work well for what I'm trying to do?
Right.
So, prime example, I had a call with a partner today, and they were figuring out if they want to do some stuff overseas, which would have to be webinar based. I go, what's your goals? What are you trying to achieve? They were asking me, should we do this? And I'm like, I don't know. And
Right.
if I'm like, what's your goals? Well, we haven't. I go, well, you have to define that, because if you define that, those are going to tell you if you should be doing webinars, or should you got 5,000 people on your list. Have you talked to them? No, they already raised their hand. Do something for them. Instead of trying to do a webinar to the type of web. So this will tell the difference between two types of webinar. Instead of trying to do a webinar to bring in people from a whole who don't know you, produce a webinar for the ones that are already on the list to push them further down the pipeline.
Right. So
So it's
produce
really
them for
just
the
how you
people that you
use it.
have there. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
actually bringing that value. And
Yeah.
when we're talking about value, we're actually talking about solving a problem,
Yep.
making it interesting enough that they want to actually take time out of their day to be there to actually do that.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, so speaking of the value that, and I'm going to keep going on this webinar because I'm
Yeah.
actually super interested now in this. It kind of like went past my head that like, oh yeah, Jimmy's doing like a ton of webinars, and now this just makes sense to talk about now.
Sure.
When I'm setting up a webinar, right?
Yep.
Live or pre-recorded, does that matter? Does that affect?
It does to a degree.
Okay.
Live. The great thing about live is it's live, so you can change it up on the fly. You can interact with people in real time. You can get valuable information, because if it's pre-recorded, you don't know if something is hitting or not hitting. You're not able to react and go, wow, that was great. I got some great insights. I always say the best part of any presentation is a Q&A, because the Q&A lets you know what you got right and what you missed the boat on, and
So if it's
then,
silent, you've missed the boat, right?
well, not only if they're silent, but if they have tons of additional questions. Now
Okay.
you're going, oh, I really didn't hit what they really wanted. Now they were in the right place because the topic drew them in, but this now gives you an ability to expand on it. Go back and retool the webinar, because they ask you a question, you're like, oh man, that I never thought about. That's a good question. Let me get a slide on that. And I do it. People think, oh, the webinar is done, it's done. No, even if you record a webinar, you should do it enough times live, and it's almost like A/B testing.
Right.
And you're big on A/B testing with ads. You need to A/B test your webinar as you being the control
Right.
until you get it to the point where you go, okay, I think I've answered all the questions. Then you make it a recorded webinar.
Right.
And so the beauty of a recorded webinar is, live webinars, oh, I got to wait till next Thursday at 3 p.m. Recorded webinars goes, hey, you in 5 minutes, you have immediate access to this. So now it really becomes a thing. Because I know I sign up for webinars is usually because I'm in need of something. I need to know the information. So I'll wait for it if it's not time sensitive. But sometimes I'm like, I really wish I could watch this bad boy right now. And I would watch it pre-recorded just so I can get the information.
Right.
So the question becomes, you have to make a decision on which is better. And you might have to test it. And there's no reason to not have two versions. I've seen where you can sign up for the live webinar on next Thursday, or you can just watch this pre-recorded version. And they go, oh, I'll watch the pre-recorded version, or I'll wait for the live webinar. I just wanted to book it, get it in my calendar, and I just don't have time to watch it right now anyway.
Right.
So I think both can work. You just have to figure out what works best for you.
My guess is if you're going to do pre-recorded, though, it probably makes sense to go through the first steps of you're saying do a few runs.
Do a few live. Yeah.
So
do not pre-record it out the back, because you're never gonna know what's not hitting if it's not hitting.
Right. And so you've done both. So like, what does success look like for you? Is it so when you're evaluating the pre-record versus the live, are you looking at the end result of, because they've already signed up for a conversion, right? Which is the sign up. Are you then looking for a potential closed deal, an inquiry? Like how would you measure that success on the back end?
Well, I look at webinars in general as middle of the funnel. So you get top of the funnel is awareness, bottom of the funnel is decision, middle of the funnel is consideration. They're considering you along with some other options. Bottom of the funnel is they've chosen the option. They're just choosing between the vendors. Right. So your job as the webinar person is to get them to one step closer to thinking that you are the possibility, and then coming to the realization that percentage is going to be small.
Right.
And understanding that to go, okay, what's the easy ask here? And what's the price point? If you're trying to sell somebody into a $2,000 program, it's going to be relatively slim. But if you're trying to get them into a $19.95 program, or just to give you a call, well, the conversion can be a lot higher. So the question then still becomes, what is the ask? And how appealing is it? How appealing can you make it? And you're still fine tuning it to go, maybe my initial objective is just to get the webinar going and just to get somebody to sign up for the thing. After you hit that milestone, and maybe you've done it 3 or 4, and I've done a webinar that I've done 9 months in a row, but it's such a better webinar now. And I had to learn some things because I'm always creating new topics to talk about, and I have to test them out, and sometimes I'll test them out and then use them on a client, or sometimes I'll base it on the fact that I did this on a client, so I'm always pulling it from some data source, but the objective can be, for the webinar, it could be so many different things. You just have to determine what that is. Is it a sale? Is it just to get them to sign up for a free trial? Is it to get them to call you on the phone? Is it to get them to download a book or something like that? What's the next step? You have to determine what that is.
And then measure it compared to pre-recorded and see what that looks like. Make that adjustment from there.
Yeah, exactly. And a pre-recorded for me would be like a summit. Like I did a summit. We're about to relaunch a summit we did a year and a half ago. You were on that summit.
Yep.
And all that was pre-recorded.
Right.
But so we weren't selling the individual. We were selling the whole package for them to get access to it. If anybody on the web on this podcast knows what has either been a part of a summit or has produced one, we took a lot of heavy lifting off by doing all that in advance. So we're picking topics. Now the draw for that is not based on one webinar, so you're not shooting yourself in the foot. You have a number of them, and then you might have some breakout stars, and you might have some ones that just you thought were going to be great, and it's just crickets. but it's still a great opportunity to take that content and sometimes repurpose some of it, chop it up into pieces. It just becomes about how much resources can you apply to this. So, like I said, pre-recorded can be great because the conversions can be lower, but it's pre-recorded and it's on autopilot. So if you got 5 or 10 or 15 people coming through on a weekly basis or monthly basis, and you get 6 or 7 calls off of it, and your close rate is 50% when they're on the phone with you, I say that's a good day or a good month.
Yeah, that's a great day.
So you just got to look at it and go, well, it is what it is. This is what, the convert. Like I said, you look at the numbers, and like you said, you compare and you go, okay, I picked up 2 new clients off of this webinar that's on its own. That works for me. I didn't have to do any extra work.
Right. So it's fine tuning the process first in terms of your message. It is testing, comparing the method in which you're delivering that webinar, and then it's pivoting based off of the actual, we'll just call it close conversion numbers.
Yeah.
Makes total sense.
Yeah. And like I said, and the key here that is still to understand is the webinar itself is just a part of the bigger picture. You can't look at the webinar as, all right, this is the thing that's going to make me rich.
Right. Exactly. It's consideration. It's strictly that. It's just like putting out content on social, just like we're going to do with this. We're going to chop this up into 13 different pieces. But it's not going to necessarily win a deal over. It's just going to get your name out there, add some value to your customer, and hopefully get them in the funnel.
Yeah. And next thing you know, the best thing that can happen is you're no longer cold calling.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You're just cold creating content pretty much.
Yeah. And you're basing it on the research. And so I love doing them because it just makes me a better marketer.
Right. So the other piece I want to talk about webinar, you mentioned authority.
Yep.
When you say authority, obviously you have years of experience in the marketing industry. So you have your own authority, but maybe you don't have thousands of followers. I don't have thousands of followers. Do you get authority by having people at different corporate positions on your podcast? Do you look at getting partners like you did with SEM Rush? Like, is that what you mean by authority, or like how do you go about it?
Yeah. So that's a big question. And the key, what I spent a lot of last year focusing on is my unique selling proposition. So the key here is it's the cart and the horse. Which one comes first? And you got to really it's a delicate dance, and you got to do a little bit of both. One of the first thing, and this takes me back to when I got the position at the New York Marketing Association. I was just going in to be a speaker. And this is where this is where free sometimes pays off big. Meaning that they weren't going to pay me to speak. And sometimes I've turned down the ability for people to want to pay me, so I can't sell on the back end. And keep in mind, I'm not a salesman. We do what we do so well that it sells itself. And I want to have the ability to close if that happens. So when you're looking at, all right, crap, I lost my train of thought. Give me that question again so I can pick back up here.
So it's basically, how do you establish authority?
Okay. Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah. So I think, and this is where it gets really funny. So I produced this thing called the extended one sheet. And what I realized is, and you may have realized this too, Dean, when you're talking to prospects for the first time or current clients, they're looking at you kind of starstruck. And they're like, you know what? You're so much more than what I'm reading, or when I go to your website, or when I do this. Have you ever had companies say that to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what they're really saying is you're not positioning yourself compared to who you actually really are. And so meaning that the majority of the people that are, and I would say listening to this podcast, you have more than you're giving yourself credit for.
Yeah.
So what you need to do is assess what you actually have, because you'd be surprised how much you have already, which now starts to give you the authority that you probably already have. Now the job is after, and what I mean by that, you might update your bio, especially this year alone, because you probably took a lot of time and took some more classes. Maybe you got some new certifications. Maybe you made one really great partnership. You don't need 10, You don't need 5. You just need 1.
Right.
And you need to now leverage that to go, this here could be used to get other people to understand that somebody else, either bigger than me or more, it has more followers than me, or has what looks like to be more than me, is validating me as somebody that everybody else should be listening to. Now you got some authority. You have authority you didn't really leverage. Now you leverage that authority, and now you're purposefully trying to do other things. So a friend of mine, she said, I remember a friend of mine, she sent me back in August, she goes, hey, entrepreneur.com is looking for speakers. Looking for writers for their website.
Right.
And I'm like, this is great. So I looked at the application. I said, okay, I think I can do this. And then, but before I submit it, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I said, I'm going to update my assets. So I updated my website. I had my bio rewritten. I found better headshots. I had headshots from an event I did that a photographer took and gave to me that were sitting in a digital folder doing nothing. They, to date, are the best headshot I've ever had. And I didn't even pay for them. Just sitting there. Right. So I revamped all of this stuff. I did an assessment of, I have this certification. I have this certification. Oh, I forgot I took that certification. I have this certification. Then I Googled myself. I was written up. I had an article. I got a mention in DataBox. I had a mention, and I'm going, duh. So when I made this sheet, now you can imagine all the stuff on it that I had not, that didn't exist in one simple structure. Now I took that with the new bio and the nice headshot. Then I filled out the form, sent it to them, and within 2 weeks I was in. I said, ooh, now I had that credential. Oh yeah, now I'm a writer for this. And I just so happened to also came out with an article on Forbes, and that was written about me on behalf of a client. But this was the writer or the journalist. I was trying to get that article published with her for almost 1.5 years. And it was on a totally different topic. It just so happened I was having a conversation with her, and that topic gelled perfectly with her at that moment. Right. And then, I stepped back and I said, don't interfere, let her do her job. And that's how
it was being in the trenches, doing it one step at a time. But the way you look at it is you try to just put the building blocks in, but it took you 1.5 years.
And it took 1.5 years. And so that's what people think, oh, well, you can do. I'm like, no, this was, so you guys are there. You're already on that trajectory. You just now are more aware of it. So you're going, okay, what else can I do? What other opportunities are out there? Right. And speaking, people are like, well, nobody's going to bring me on to speak. Well, don't wait for them. Produce your own webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. I used to do the free speaking. I've always done free speaking gigs, but I used to do it locally here. And eventually I went to, actually got flown down to North Carolina, got flown down to Tampa to do a webinar. And again, they paid for me to get there, but outside that, it was really on my own dime. But it works really well. And it does add up after a while. It does give you that authority.
Yeah. And so even listening to you there, you're either regional or you're national now.
Right.
It's just about,
we have clients all over the United States now.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if you're not leveraging that, because that's part of your unique selling proposition versus a guy who just only operates in a 20-mile radius.
Right.
Your experience with working with companies across multiple industries in multiple cities give you a wealth of knowledge that a local business owner would be like, I like to learn from him, not only as a client, but as someone that I can look up to.
Right. Yeah. Makes total sense to me. Yeah. Just you got to put in that beginning work, and then that's how you build up authority.
Yep. And like I said, based on a lot of things, most of the people on here have things that we call sitting in their backyard. They're just totally overlooking it.
You just have to look how to retool them and put them out in the right mediums. That medium might not be an own channel. It might be a publication, even if it's small.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Who do you know that will, hey, let me write some stuff for your article? don't turn your nose up at any opportunity that gives you the ability to help people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. So let me rethink what I was going to say.
We take a
Well,
drink quick.
yeah. I think I might do the same actually.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have it. Never mind. um, no, that was perfect actually. So the webinars was something I really wanted to cover just because it's so weird. I just like forgot about it. And then I was like, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy's great at this. So, I think it is a big part of marketing still,
Yeah.
but it's oversaturated, just like podcasting, just like creating videos now.
Mm-hmm.
So figuring out those value points, and then I think partnering with people,
Let's
I
talk
think
about
that's key.
partnerships, because that's a huge one. That's what I'm getting a lot of questions on, because I
Yeah.
could tie this all together.
Walk me through that. How do you get a huge company, which I'm pretty sure they're filing for IPO or they have an IPO already, SEM Rush. How do you get those guys to look at you as a consultant and say, we want to partner with this guy? What does
Yeah.
that process look like?
And that's a great question. And this is where you have to become creative,
Okay.
because they're not going to do that. They have I guess the biggest thing most people have to understand is everybody else has an agenda,
Of course.
and you're
Their
not at the
agenda is to
top of
get
it.
right. Especially when you look at what you're doing, what they're doing, the
Mm-hmm.
product complements what you're doing as a marketer, but not necessarily has anything
Yeah.
with you
You have
selling
to.
more of their SaaS product right now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And they got enough people. They call that affiliate marketing. So, okay. So it's not anything new. The thing here, and this is where now the unique selling proposition, like that one sheet I told you that has all this great stuff on it,
right,
that's only a piece of the process that you're going to use to secure a bigger partner, to basically swim upstream.
right,
And in this instance, you know, and we're perfectly primed for this. And when I say we, I'm talking about people in the digital marketing world, because a good majority of our deliverables is based on technology.
right,
And I actually ran across an article today, or got an email from someone that started a business that's helping entrepreneurs partner with SaaS companies. And I'm like, already there. And I say that because let's just use SEM Rush, for example. So looking at SEM Rush, I remember at the beginning of last year, before things got all haywire and totally bonkers,
right,
I said, and I'd already left the agency, and I was working with New York Marketing Association and some other brands, and I said, and I started working with clients again, because I kind of left them alone for a while. And I remember I was in a meeting, and I go, why am I not using the SEM Rush tool? And the reason why I thought that is I go, every time I use that tool, I have almost a damn near 100% close rate for the agency that I worked for. They would bring me in, I pull up the tool, I ask a couple questions, I find some things. They were like, okay, where's the contract? And so the tool was instrumental for me closing deals for someone else. So I said, I need to be using that tool for myself. But I said, we need to take this a step further. I go, I need to master the tool. Once I master the tool, as an outsider that doesn't work for this company, I can now bring myself back in and say, hey, I can sell this tool better than your salespeople. Why? Not because I'm better at it, but because I use it from a totally different perspective. They're using it going, hey, here are the features. Here's this, here's that. And it does this. I'm going, here's how I help people do this with this tool. And they're
right,
going, oh, so I sell it from a different perspective, but from a perspective that is totally hands on the ground.
right,
And I went to them and I said, hey, I still have bigger aspirations. I actually, hopefully this comes true, but I had a call with them today, because now they're this close to backing my summit. That's
right.
going to be huge for me.
The
They
Moving
have
Business
6.
Forward Summit.
Yeah. Yep. And so they're that close. But I started with doing a single webinar for them. I went in, so we gotta regulate yourself a little bit. Now I was a little cocky. I said, hey, what will it take for me to speak on stage for you guys globally? but I wanted to set the stage to go, hey, I'm very serious about this, and I'll do whatever it takes. You need me to do a video. And they gave me some things. They were like, hey, do a couple videos on this piece of the tool and do that. I did it like that. And they were like, okay, because I think the biggest problem is follow through for most people. And so I immediately showed them that if they gave me a task, I would get it done. And then I was using the tool well beyond what they had created the tool for.
Right.
And pretty much a lot of people that have tools, their favorite tools, they're probably taking it outside. They're definitely using it outside the box. Use that to your advantage and go, because even when I pitched that CMOs, I'm like, look, I create lead magnets with this thing. They're like, hey, I wasn't created for that. What I do. And so I did it. So I did a couple of their webinars, and then I finally got them to accept my webinar.
Right.
So you have to build some trust with them, but you have to go in. But I drew out how the relationship should kind of work. I said, I want to work with you. I want to be able to be one of your outside non-employees that you lean on to help you educate your audience. And they were like, okay, yeah, we like that. We do those type of things. So I fit myself into what they were doing, got myself in. And now other companies are now calling me up going, hey, you want to do a takeover of our social media channel? I wasn't planning that. Those become byproducts.
Okay, because they saw what you did with SEM Rush.
They see what I'm doing.
We want this. They want an ambassador, somebody that's going to really produce content for them.
And exactly. We are now officially influencers.
Right.
And so now you go, okay, and when you do, I did a takeover of Flywheel's Instagram account, 18,000 Instagram followers.
Flywheel's a big company. They're owned by WP Engine now, or?
Yeah. They got bought up by WP Engine. And like I said, and this was, and you know how I got the takeover? I gave them my one sheet because they wanted to feature me in February for Black History Month. And so they say, hey, send over a bio and a headshot. I sent my extended one sheet. They looked at it and said, would you do a takeover? And I was like, well, first of all, what's that? How do I do it? And so they educated me, sent me the one sheet. I was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. But once you start putting things in place and you have certain tools, the tools, again, do the heavy lifting. And if I didn't have that one sheet, they would have thought I'm just another marketer. Yeah, we'll feature you. That's great. Congratulations. Pat on the back. Goodbye. But they saw more because they were like, wow, this guy speaks. He's got some things going on. He's a part of this organization. He joined the board. Wow. You must have some knowledge that my audience would love to hear about. And I said, yes, I do.
Right.
And it becomes a snowball. And that's kind of how, now I'm having these conversations with MasterCard and the NBA and all these other companies, because it took me a year, but the more I got involved in thinking about the authority, at the end of the day, we still have to produce what we have to practice what we preach, and we have to produce something.
Deliverable. And that's the other thing. There's a deliverable behind all the things that you do.
Exactly.
So it's hard work.
And it's hard work, but we're just now fine tuning the side of us that could be rough. Right. So we're taking the sand and we're sanding down the diamond and making the edges smooth, because we're still a diamond.
Right.
We're just rough on the outsides.
Right. Just got to polish it up a little bit.
Polish it up. Now you got the inside and out, and then you just continue to build on that. And another one of the big things I did was I joined a board, and I joined the board to have that on my one sheet, but I also joined the board because now you can rub arms with bigger players that are not necessarily in your industry, but people that you can work with and build other relationships.
Yeah, it's important.
So, JP Morgan and, my conversation with MasterCard is because I'm on a board with somebody who's I think he's community relations for the United States.
Wow.
And I'm like, hey, buddy. and we're just kicking it. And next thing you know, of course, we're going to talk business at some point, so you got to be cool with it. But you got to also understand, hey, I mean, at the end of the day, everybody's still here because they have a job to do.
Right. So processes and networks, that's what I'm getting out of this. But the
Yes.
processes are key.
Yeah, the process is the key. The focus is key. The ideal of 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 patience. You know, you can't. Oh, I need to get this guy. You got to go. If he's not ready to be got, then you need to chill.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm going through, well, because we talk all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
like we're going through, this is the first time I ever worked with a PR company,
Yep.
and that takes time. Like I could tell, it's not like my world of well, even digital marketing takes time,
Yep.
but in paid media, a lot of times you'll see those results in 1 week, 2 weeks. It's
Yep.
possible, not all the
Mm-hmm.
time, but you see it.
Yep.
But now that I'm in that PR world,
Oh,
not doing
that's
that work, but as a client, it's really interesting to say, like, oh, like we're laying this groundwork.
mm-hmm.
I know that that's going to be a 6 month to a year, exactly like what you said,
Yeah.
what your process was. You did it very organically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I could see that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's working as much, and it comes from both sides. Some the I think the problem with a lot of small businesses is they're like, okay, I'm going to hire this company and I'm going to sit back and wait,
Right.
and you still have to do things that give them something
Oh,
to
you have to,
market, to
yeah, yeah.
push.
Every week I'm coming out with content. On the weekends,
Mm-hmm.
I'm coming out with content for them to basically get out there.
Yeah.
That's what they're good at. They're good at
Mm-hmm.
making the connections. I'm good at talking about what I'm good at, and taking your advice too of trying to stay really focused
Yeah.
on the verticals that we're talking about, or the services that we're talking about. So
Sure.
I
Yeah.
definitely see that firsthand.
Yeah, and so you have to go. I have to stay a part of the process, and I say this because we both work with clients, and they're like, "Okay, you do all of it," and I'm going, "No, I still need your insight. I need your input. That helps me do my job better. If you
Right.
don't give me that insight, then I can't. I can produce stuff for you, but it'll definitely be more on brand and more on point if you're involved, and it will help both of us. You know, so
Definitely.
that's where, when they want to take the full hands off approach, sometimes you can't, unless you happen to be some huge company like a MasterCard where they don't need to do that. But we are not in that position. So we still have to kind of wear those hats. The good news is we can have professionals on our team
Right.
that are there to check us.
Right. Right. Awesome. Awesome. I love to hear that. And I like that you're candid with that. Like you're still pursuing that opportunity too. So people see that it's in the trenches for you, right? You're in
Yeah.
the process, you're a year and a half in, you've gotten success. Now you're just trying to keep building on it. So it's good for the audience to see. And I feel like we learned a lot today about webinars and authority. So it's definitely something as a marketer, you have to think about still. And how can
Yeah.
you use authority around you to help get your job done, especially now when you have to be a little scrappier, you have to do things a little bit more organic, and
hmm
maybe your ad spends are cut. So it's a really great way to kind of growth hack, if you will, engagement,
Well, I'll
right?
share one more thing with you because I'm actually consulting a client now about doing an actual, now I thought about it, a pre-recorded webinar
Okay.
now for a different reason, because their problem is, you know, they're getting about, they sell vending machines. And so on their website, they get about 25, I say on average, 17,000 clicks a month.
It's a lot. That's
It's a
pretty
lot.
cool.
And,
Yeah.
now, of course, a lot of that is probably tire kickers and whatnot. But it's safe to say you got to have at least a couple hundred people a month that are truly interested.
For sure.
Their problem is they can't close them enough. They don't have enough manpower. And in this instance, I said, is there a process that you take people through to verify them to the point where you can eventually sell them a machine? Yeah, there's a system. I go, you need to record that as a 30-minute almost sales webinar because they have those, and run them through that. They hit a certain stage and they're ready to talk. Oh, well, you need to watch this webinar. And at the end of this presentation, if you still want to have a conversation, you can, because that webinar is going to answer all the questions that you're going to waste my time with,
Right.
but times 200.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And so that's where, and that is, I'm going, you need to produce something to alleviate the bottlenecking that's happening right now. And now you know, if you got to talk, if you only got time to talk to 15 people a day, now you know the 15 people you're talking to have a better chance of possibly closing
Has to be the
versus
best 15 people.
missing the best 15 and talking to 14 people who had no intention of buying in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a qualifier in that case.
Yeah, it becomes a qualifier. So, and that's why I say webinars are not dead. You just got to figure out what it is that what are you doing? Where would it fit and why?
What's the strategic purpose of the webinar?
Yeah.
That's really interesting, especially for high lead companies.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of reverse engineer, instead of getting so many leads, dwindle them down.
Dwindle them down. Get rid of the ones that are not serious. And you know, and I even tell them, they're like, well, how deep should we get? I go, if it's a process that's kind of tough, make it tough, because you want the ones that come out on the other end to be tough.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you have that many people coming through, you can afford to do that. If
Right.
you only had a few coming through, maybe you'll make it easier, and maybe I need to do the harder pitch on the actual call.
Right.
You figure out, and then, hey, if it's pre-recorded, A/B test them.
Yeah, exactly. Then you get into testing and then figuring out what that pivot looks like.
Figure out which one converts better, and then call it a day.
Exactly.
This one gets me better leads. Winner.
Love it. So Jimmy, if people want to get in contact with you, where should they look you up?
They can email me, jimmy@jimmynewson.com. They can go to my website, jimmynewson.com. They can Google my name, Jimmy Newson. I own, I think, the first 6 pages of that. So, you know, I'm probably the easiest guy on the planet, at least one of them, to find. And there are more Jimmy Newsons, but they don't matter.
Love it. You got the ranking. You got the authority. So everyone hears it first. Jimmy, thank you again for your time today. I appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure, Dean. Anytime, bro. Anytime.
Cool. Thank you.